Let's do it, people. Ask FP. It's a little bit of a day, not a full day, but close to a day late. I do apologize. Coming with an early version. I have recovered from the Cubs losing Game 3 last night. We'll see what happens tonight, man. Nothing to lose now. The old adage. But let's start off with the first question, which is the question of the week, because it actually pertains to something going on right now that I'm working on. Brady Babin says, when is the first Legends Roster 2 video? Can't wait for it, in his Bart Scott voice. Can't wait. The first video is coming, but I want you guys to understand that just because you're not seeing videos does not mean that I'm not making Legends, because I am. So the progress is being made. I'm just not putting the videos out as early as I did before. So I'm kind of building up a little bit of a stock of stuff to show you guys first. Dig it? Cool. Will Breedlove says, is Skip Bayless one of the biggest jerks in all of sports? For me, he is. And at times he says the dumbest things. I totally understand why people don't like Skip Bayless. Sometimes he does things or says things that I don't particularly agree with. But I do understand the business that we're in. You say things that are supposed to get a reaction. Sometimes you can overdo that a little bit, but you cannot be afraid to have an opinion, even if it's going to be different than everyone else's, because that's what makes people want to hear what you have to say, whether or not they agree with it or not. The one thing that I do remember that he did that I took the most exception with was he made a whole habit of making fun and talking bad about Chris Bosh. They had Chris Bosh on the show. And Chris Bosh said, man, I understand your job. Because Chris Bosh is a very intelligent guy. He says, I understand your whole, your job and your business and all of that. But the only thing I would ask is that you stop, messing with my name. He was like, because that means a lot to my family. He was calling him Bosh Spice, And right to his face, he said, no, I'll do it again. Now, if this had been a different type of guy, Chris Bosh could have choked him out and killed him. But you know what I'm saying? But he didn't do that. Yurpadeedooda says the top 5 NBA rookies for Rookie of the Year. He has another question coming up, but I can knock that out for you. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns is one of them. I believe D'Angelo Russell is one of them. I don't think Kobe will let him get the Rookie of the Year, but I think he definitely is one of them. I also like Stanley Johnson a lot for that. I really like Cameron Payne. Always did from early on. So that's 4, and I'm actually interested in seeing what happens with Kristaps Porzingis. Even though I'm not going to put him necessarily in that upper echelon, but I'm interested in seeing what happens. Yurpadeedooda also says rookie to have the biggest and greatest long-term impact in the NFL. Where if you're talking about rookies that are in there right now, I'm going to have to say Marcus Mariota. I do truly believe he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the next 2 to 3 years. Brady Babin says, do you think that LSU will make the college football playoff? I do. I really do. I think the team is built the right way, leaning on the run game and their defense. When you look back at the best LSU teams, that's how they've been made. That's how they've operated. And they probably have the most talented running back in the history of their school. There with Leonard Fournette. As long as he stays healthy, this team is nasty. Peter Bailey says, "Yo, franchise, do you know how to use persuasive pitches in MyGM? The option doesn't seem to come up while making a trade." I think it only comes up in certain situations. The situation has to apply, or there's certain qualifications that have to be there. I'm not totally sure what all of them are, but I have seen them pop up in certain. I think what it is I think there has to be an interest level of a certain degree. So I don't know if there's number or letter grade, but the team or the GM has to be 60% interested or whatever for you to be able to use a persuasive pitch. You can't use it for a trade that there's just no interest in. Shahrukh Rahat says the team that has surprised you so far in the NFL, for me it's the Bills or the Jets. I would agree with you with the Jets for sure. I did not expect them to be as competitive as they have been. I knew they'd have a good defense because of the talent on that side of the ball, and I also knew Ty Bowles would be able to bring his expertise on that side of the ball as well. But they have been pretty decent offensively, despite the fact that you have Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback and not a lot else there. I mean, Brandon Marshall has been good, and I know that from, him being in Chicago. He's still got something left in the tank. So, but I'm still surprised. Shahrukh Rahat also says redraft the top 5 picks in the 2012 NFL draft. For me, it's Luck, Wilson, Kuechly, Matt Kalil, and Dontari Poe. For me, it would probably be Luck still. Russell Wilson would be in there, but Alshon Jeffrey would definitely be there for me. And I'm not saying that just because he's a Bear. I mean, I think he's one of the more dynamic young wide receivers in the NFL. I also like Ryan Tannehill a lot too, as well as Bobby Wagner for Seattle. So those would be my top 5 guys. A lot of times linebackers that are not outside linebacker in 3-4 get a little bit ignored. But Bobby Wagner is one of the probably 3 to 4 best linebackers in the NFL. So Parker Nelson says, do you think the 2013 rookie shooting guards like Victor Oladipo, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, C.J. McCollum, and Ben McLemore can have a breakout season? I think it's possible, but out of that particular group, I like KCP a lot, but out of that particular group, I think C.J. McCollum is in the best position to really break out this year because with LaMarcus Aldridge leaving Portland, that team's going to need another scorer really bad to pair with Damian Lillard. And McCollum can put the ball in the basket. Anybody who saw him in college and little brief things of him in the NBA knows the guy has he can really score. So I think he's in the best position to really have a really good scoring season this year for Portland. Simon Torvey Sunland says, what do you think will happen with Joel Embiid? Now, I really don't know, man. I wish him the best. I hope he does get healthy, get a chance to get out there on the floor, because he does have a ton of talent physically, great timing for as a shot blocker. But you got to be scared and a little bit afraid of looking at him moving forward, because you just don't know, man. You really just don't know. But so it's hard to predict what's going to happen. It really is. Alexander says, what are your East-West playoff seeding predictions for this upcoming NBA season? So I had to write that down, Alexander. So it's kind of long. So let me kind of go through it, and I don't have it on the monitor in front of me, so I'm going to turn my head a little bit. But I got the Cavs, the Hawks, and the Bulls as the top 3 seeds in the East. I have the Wizards, the Heat at 4 and 5, and I have the Bucks at 6, the Raptors at 7, and I got the Pacers at 8. I really believe in Paul George. In the West, I got the Warriors number 1, and this is regular season. And I got the Thunder and the Clippers 2 and 3. And I got the Spurs and the Rockets at 4 and 5. Now, mind you, this is regular season. And I got the Grizzlies and the Pelicans rounding it out. Those are my predictions. Simon Torvey Sunland says, should D'Angelo Williams be allowed to wear pink accessories, or is the NFL right in denying it? I think the NFL, is a little bit extra with denying it, but rules are rules, okay? They don't want to let you do anything with the uniforms unless they can make some money off of it. And, people may not like that, but it's their business. This is their business. They run the business. Those guys are employees. So when everybody works someplace where there's some rules that you don't quite understand, but you have to follow them because it's not your job. It's not your business. It's not your company. So we sometimes do have to just learn to accept the rules. And if you don't like it, you go start your own. That's kind of the way it goes. And I understand he wants to honor, a loved one who passed away from cancer. Believe you me, I totally know how that is, unfortunately. Been through it several times in my life, unfortunately. but rules are rules. Your boy says, is Graham a similar situation to Percy Harvin? Both times they gave up a first round to get a talent they don't use. I think Graham's a little different than Percy Harvin because they absolutely just could not find a way to incorporate Percy Harvin. I think that Wilson and Graham are getting a little bit more comfortable. They're just not there yet. So I think just they have to be a little bit more patient with that. Your boy also says, what do you think football will be like in 50 years if it is even still around? That might sound crazy to some people, but I don't think it's crazy. 50 years may be a little too soon for the idea that I have in mind, but I would not be totally surprised if in 50 years, if this world is still here, that football is not played by human beings anymore, by some sort of sophisticated symbiote type of clones that can be as violent as people want the game to be without the concern for physical well-being. Because people want the game back violently, but the fact of the matter is human beings' bodies just are not being able to take it. So is the answer to that making it where it's not human beings playing the game anymore? That's something to think about. Solomon says, do you think that Golden State will repeat? I do not. I think there are too many serious challengers, and barring a rash of injuries again to those serious challengers like we saw last year, I don't think they repeat. I think the Thunder would beat them. I think the Spurs would beat them if healthy. I think the Clippers would beat them if healthy. And I think Cleveland will beat them if healthy. Blaine Evans says, is DDP a WWE Hall of Famer? Why is he not already in? I do think he's a WWE Hall of Famer, and I wouldn't be surprised if he went in the next class. It's one thing, the work he did inside the ring, but the stuff he's done for guys like Scott Hall, even though he still had some problems afterwards, as well as like Jake the Snake, I think those things there are a big deal, and I think that'll help him. James Livingston says, did you ever get a chance to watch Ben Wilson play a game back in the day? I did not ever get an opportunity. That was kind of far back to a point where, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to see him play like live. I've seen him play on, like videos and highlights and that sort of thing. But I got I don't even know if the word is funny, but I got a Ben Wilson story to tell. And this is going to take me a second, but I'm going to run through it as quick as possible. So the Ben Wilson story is on television, and coincidentally, the weird thing is he lived a block away from where I grew up, right? So he lived on 70th and Eberhard, and I grew up on the next block, right? So, I'm watching the Ben Wilson story, and there's several people on the documentary that I know personally. I'm like, oh my God, the whole time, right? So they also show the gentleman who shot him and killed him, right? So they show him and he's telling his story. And to be honest with you, my heart kind of went out to the guy, because when this went down, these both of them were just kids, just young men. Somebody made a mistake. They both made mistakes that day, and this guy's actions, essentially ruined 2 lives. More than that if you count the people's families, right? So, I didn't hate him or whatever, like maybe some people did. So, funny thing, right? The next day, my wife and I, we go to a friend's birthday party. She has a party at the house. We're at the house, kicking it. And this guy walks in the door. And I'm looking at this dude, and I'm like, I know this guy looks familiar. I don't know where I know this dude from, but I'm like, I know him. So a friend walks up to me and says, bruh, that's the dude that killed Ben Wilson. I'm like, oh my God. So as soon as he says it, it clicks to me. And I'm like, oh my God, right? So the whole time I'm doing my best not to stare at this dude, because you the dude that just, whoa, really? So, he's the guy's trying to mingle or whatever and the whole nine. But he even tries to holler at this female, this girl I know, you know what I mean? He tries to holler at her for a minute. And then he bounces, though. He bounces pretty quickly. And the way he left, it was kind of like he had started to feel like it was like the news that who he was kind of circulated through the room, and I could see it feels like from his disposition he looked to get uncomfortable, and he left, and I couldn't help but think like, man, this happened like 30 30 years ago, and this dude is still, when he comes in the room, if it's people his age, he's still the dude who killed Ben Wilson. And he just can't. He'll never get bad at, and that just shows you, man. Sometimes the decisions we make, they follow us. You know what I'm saying? Forever. It's crazy. My man Brady coming through with another LSU question. He says, "Is or will Leonard Fournette win the Heisman Trophy?" I think he will. I really think he will, barring an injury. I think he will. LSU's offensive line is very much above average, and this dude is just a monster. I mean, you know how when Joe Rogan has that promo, he's talking about Henan Barrow. Henan Barrow is a monster. Well, Leonard Fournette is a monster. I mean, he really is, man. And I think that the ground and pound style that LSU runs, combined with the offensive line and his talent, and how good I think that team's going to do, I think he wins the Heisman. Mr. 502 Media says, how do you feel about this Nevada ban of daily fantasy sports? I think they can't make any money off of it, so they're peanut butter and jealous. I mean, yeah. I mean, to a degree, but I mean, I don't know. I write a weekly, maybe 2 or 3 articles a week on daily fantasy sports advice. And I'll be quite honest, sometimes it goes back and forth in my head, like, the gambling aspect of it, because I'm not a gambler or whatever, but I understand it's marketed as a game of skill, but that's being challenged right now. So I'm not really sure how I feel about it, totally honest. Weston Flores says, what kind of money do you think David Price will get, considering he sucks in the postseason? I don't know if sucks is the right word. It seems like sucks might be a might be a strong term. But the thing about guys, and we got another question that's coming up that I think is going to be similar to this, but when you give out a free agent deal, you should be paying a guy for what he does across the season more so than what they do in the playoffs, especially if it's drastically different than what they do in the regular season. I mean, David Price has been rough, and I mean, he got like a 5.24 ERA in the postseason. I mean, he's 2-7, just not very good, right? But the body of work in the regular season is really solid. So I don't think you can just totally throw that out of the window, Dylan Freeman says, do you think it's cool that my math teacher plays 80s music every day in class? I understand that could be tough, Dylan, for sure. 80s music is probably my least favorite decade of music. The 60s is kind of bad for me too, even though there's some good Motown stuff here and there. But you know what I'm saying? That 80s can become kind of corny. So even some of the late 80s hip hop was decent. But you got some good stuff here and there. But 80s is kind of rough. Period. Dylan Freeman says, what's my favorite Attitude Era moment? Oh man. You might have to. I think Kane's debut was phenomenal, and that might have actually even been pre-Attitude Era. I'm not sure, but I think it was considered Attitude Era. That was amazing. Several Rock promos, but those two were the ones that stick out in my head. Franchise Gaming says, what are some must-need game modes for sports games? Well, at this point now, I think you got to have a single-player campaign mode, like My Career or something like that. And I think these companies need to start following 2K's lead and not just make it like a glorified player lock, which a lot of the companies, that's what they're doing with that mode. It's just, oh, you're just controlling him, but there's no story to it or whatever. I thought Fight Night Champion, even though it's an individual sport, I thought they did great with that single player campaign with champion mode with Andre Bishop and them. So I thought that was really good. So I think that's one mode. I also think some sort of my team mode. Obviously, I don't even have to tell you franchise mode is to me a must. I mean, if you don't got a good franchise mode, I'm not buying your game. I don't care how good it is. So, if I had to buy the game, you know what I mean. So I've been blessed that I don't have to buy games as much, if all at all anymore. But if I was on that straight consumer side, man, and if you don't have a franchise mode, I'm not buying it. Michael Rigsby Jr. says, do you think that Carmelo Anthony could or would be considered a bust due to the hype and expectations he came in the NBA with? Mike, no way in the world. There's no way you can consider Melo a bust. I mean, has he won a championship? No. Has he perennially advanced or led his team to finals or whatever? No. But he has been to the playoffs 10 years with 2 relatively deep runs in the playoffs. Not to mention that individually, he's led the league in scoring. He's never averaged less than 20 points a game in his career, and he has a career scoring average of 25.2 points a game. I mean, you can't call anybody with those accomplishments a bust. I mean, there's no way. Yurpadeedooda says, with Daniel Murphy's recent streak, what do you think will happen with him come free agency with an expiring contract? So this was the question I was talking about when we were talking about David Price. Daniel Murphy's a good player anyway, right? But you want to pay him based off of him being a good player, because that's what he's proven himself to be in the regular season, as opposed to being some out-of-this-world guy of what he's done in a short period of time in the postseason. Pablo Sandoval is a recent, case study for this with Boston. They paid him for his postseason exploits, but in the regular season, I think he was like a 245 hitter this year, which is even well beneath what he did in the regular season throughout his career. So you got to be careful about that. The name is James. Says the top 5 most underrated NBA players of all time. Well, this is a little bit tough, but definitely Moses Malone, and it's not because he just recently passed. I just always thought that Moses Malone didn't get enough credit. I also think that Lafayette Fat Lever is absolutely one of the most underrated players of all time. If you look at the statistics on Lever, I mean, dude. I mean, he was close to a triple-double just a night. Best rebounding guard in the history of the game, probably. Really, look it up if you're not up on that. Definitely take a look. I had to make me a little list here, and like I told you guys, it's a little far away. But I also got Ron Artest, Metta World Peace. And another guy I got is, you may not consider him to be underrated, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I believe, is underrated. I think he does not get enough credit for being, in my opinion, the greatest center of all time. Michael Rigsby also says, will the NFL and NBA benefit more from not having a salary cap like Major League Baseball, or would Major League Baseball prosper by implementing a salary cap? I think baseball could benefit from having a salary cap. I do. I mean, it doesn't prove to be the end-all, be-all, because a lot of the teams with the biggest payrolls are not successful with buying a World Series. I mean, if you look at, if the Cubs don't come back and beat the Mets, and you look at the fact that it's the Mets against the Royals, and this will be the second straight, if the Royals beat the Blue Jays, it looks like they're going to do. I mean, that's not a big money World Series, so it's not a foolproof plan, but I still think they could benefit from a salary cap. Mr. 502 Media says, do you see any developers putting out a Pro Evolution Soccer-style college football game just with generic teams and rosters? So what he means by that is basically making a game where you allow the community to fill in the gaps left by the licenses. FIFA owns all of the big licenses. Pro Evolution has a few, but they have an awesome editor and allow you basically to create your own game. I have been wanting somebody to do this with football and college sports, period, for the longest. I really think that it could work out. but a company has to have the courage to do it. But I don't know. I don't think it'll happen. If it does happen, it'll be done on PC. Ty Bud says, MyLeague rebranded team. New arena is the scenario every fan has on a basic white tee. Why is this happening? Well, they had an issue early on where when you rebranded the team, so say, for instance, I moved the Nuggets to another city. Well, the fans in the stands would still have on Nuggets jerseys. Even when if you did the little interview at the end of the first quarter, your star player would have on paraphernalia from the old team. So I think as part of the patch, they just changed everybody to plain white tees in the stands. That's my thought on it. So, but that'll do it for this episode of askFP. I truly appreciate everybody that watches this. God bless you guys, and please don't forget to leave a like for this. askFP is a labor of love. It doesn't get a lot of views, but the people who do follow it are diligent and consistent, and I appreciate y'all. God bless. Peace.